did my sorry, and I did my minor in sociology. And when I was in my undergrad, that's when I was exposed to a lot of things about health, communication, and mainly swallowing. And when I don't know if you read my bio, but in my bio, I talked about how I was sitting in one of my nutrition classes, and someone and my prof mentioned a speech language pathologist and how a dietitian would collaborate with this healthcare professional. And I was really interested in sort of their career and what they do. So I went back and did some research myself, and I found it really, really interesting. And sort of, I can go on and you can ask me questions about it, but that led me on my journey. And that's how I got to where I am today. And I love McMaster. I love being a graduate student. I love the field of speech language pathology. So I'm open to any questions you guys have.
Perfect. And I had a student just email me a few questions. So I'm just going to type in the chat box, and there's a few of them. So I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Okay. So I can read them just for everyone. So the first question is, SLP requires certain prerequisites like psychology and linguistics. Which ones did you complete from Ryerson? Based on my research, I need to take anatomy, physiology, statistics, psychology like child development or cognitive development, and introduction to language. Okay, so thank you for that question. There's different schools in Ontario and across Canada, and all of them have slightly different prerequisites that are required. But like you said in that question, those are basically the ones that most of them have in common. So the ones I did at Ryerson, I took psychology at Ryerson. I just did an intro to psych, but Ryerson didn't have the developmental psych course I needed, so I actually took that one at York. As I also took linguistics and phonetics at York University, and I took physiology as part of my nutrition degree. So I did that in my first year. And I think there was one more, or that might be all of them. So just to recap, I did psychology, linguistics, and phonetics all at York. And I did my physiology and anatomy. I think it's another one you can take, and I did that at Ryerson. But if you want to know the specific requirements of each school, you can go on to their homepage of their website, and it will be right there for you exactly what you need. So for the second question, if the prerequisite does not count towards my degree, will it be included in my Ryerson CGPA? Yes. So how speech language pathology works is they look at your last 10 credits or your last 20 half semester credits. So for Ryerson, that would be my last 2 years of study. However, it gets a bit complicated since I did an extra year at York afterwards. There were a few courses in there that count as part of my last 20 half courses. So regardless of whether it's towards a degree, not towards a degree, whatever those last 20 half semester credits are, that is what will be looked at, regardless of whether it's a prerequisite course or not. So a suggestion is, if you're looking to boost your GPA, which I know some people are, I don't want to call them bird courses, but that's what they called them when I was in school in undergrad, or some courses that you're really good at in some areas. Look into taking those courses and try to use that to boost your GPA would be my recommendation. Okay. Sorry, I feel like I'm just like talking a lot. If anyone wants to interrupt me, feel free, but I'll keep going with these questions. So multiple schools look at your sub-GPA. If I take the prerequisite courses listed above, which are not required for my degree, will they be included in my sub-GPA, or does a sub-GPA only include courses which count towards your undergraduate degree? Another great question. So I think I answered that before. Your sub-GPA will be your last 20 half courses, whatever those are, whether they're towards a degree or not towards a degree. So my courses that I took at York University after I graduated from Ryerson, those counted towards my sub-GPA, even though they weren't towards a degree. Does that make sense? Yeah? What made you pick McMaster over any other school? Wow, that's a really great question. So I applied to 3 different schools. I applied to all the Ontario schools, so U of T, McMaster, and Western. And I visited all of the schools and went to all of their orientation weeks, and that's something I really recommend. Just, you really get a feel of the vibe of the school, the culture, and you get to talk a lot to students who are part of are already students there, so you can ask them a bunch of different questions about how they like the program. And what I found is when I went to McMaster, I just had a different feeling walking into the building. I know it sounds so cheesy, and you might be laughing behind your screen, but the students just seemed so happy. They were all so close. It's a really small program. There's 32 people in my class. I think Western is about 60 and U of T might be 55. I don't know if that's exact, but close. It's close to that. So we all fit, my whole class, we fit in one classroom. It's really, really nice. It feels like you're in elementary school again. I don't know if that's something you like or not, but all of my professors know my name. They know a lot about me beyond my name. They're very supportive and very caring. Since it's a relatively new program, they're very open to feedback about how our program is going, whether we like something, whether we don't like something, and they make changes all the time depending on our feedback. So it really shows that they actually care about their students' experience and what they have to say. And I also like, I could go on and on, but I'll stop myself with one more thing. How McMaster does their program is much different than any other school. We have a philosophy, it's called self-directed learning and problem-based learning. So as opposed to many classes or many other programs, I know in my undergrad degree, you sit and you have your 5 courses, whether it's biology, chemistry, nutrition management, whatever it is. And you sit and you memorize your notes and you write an exam and you spill out everything that you've memorized, and then you go on about your day. Well, that didn't really work for me. I mean, I did fine. It got me into school, but that's not how I'm going to learn to be a practicing healthcare professional. What McMaster does is we don't sit and memorize notes. I don't have one class where someone sits and lectures at me, or I sit and I go home and memorize information. I have my class called Foundational Knowledge, which is where I learn the basics of everything I need to know. I have my clinical skills lab, which is all hands-on, and I get to practice administering assessments, scoring assessments, doing face exams, stuff that I'm actually going to be doing in practice. I have an inquiry course, which is very research-based. And then I have my problem-based learning class, which is where we get a case and we have to do research about a case and try to solve it based on all of the information we've received in our other courses. I know no other school is structured this way, and it was definitely a learning adjustment right off the bat, because you think, am I learning what I need to be learning? I know everyone else is receiving all this information that I'm not receiving, but I can't even explain how refreshing it is to not just be spoken at for however many hours a day, 6 hours a day. When I'm actually applying my knowledge, that's how I know I'm learning. And when I can recall something that I did back in September because I just practice it now, that's learning to me, and that's how I know it's going to stick with me for a long time. So that's why I love McMaster. But I know that sounded incredibly biased. I'm sure the other schools are also lovely and they have very good reputations, but I can only speak to my experience. And the last question here, what was the interview process like? How did you prepare? These are all really good questions. So McMaster is the only school that has an interview that I applied to. Western and U of T don't. You have to write a personal statement. And how I prepared was this lovely man sitting next to me. It's Ken. He helped me so much. I can't even tell you how much he helped me. And the Ryerson Career Center in general is something I did not take advantage of in my undergraduate degree. I wish I knew more about it way back then, but I was looking for somewhere to start. When I got an interview, I was like, okay, how am I going to prepare for this to the best of my ability? A lot of people practice with their friends or their family, or they look in front of a mirror and talk to themselves. Those are all really great strategies, but I need someone who doesn't know me personally for me to feel comfortable like speaking and to provide me like unbiased feedback. So I reached out to Ken in the Student Center, and I probably went down there once a week for a half hour. Ken sat with me and we whipped through a bunch of questions, as many as we could. We practiced exactly how the MMI was structured, and that gave me a lot of confidence moving forward. If you want me to talk more about what the MMI is like and how it's structured and how it's different than a typical interview, you can leave a question and I'll talk more about that. So, oh, Andrea, hi, I got accepted to the SLP program at McMaster. I'll be starting there in September and I'm super excited. I just wanted to know how you feel about the program and clinical placements and just your thoughts in general and any advice. Oh, Andrea, congratulations. I'm so glad that all of your hard work paid off. You'll be starting in September. How do you feel about clinical placements? Okay. So due to COVID-19, unfortunately, I was supposed to have a placement starting at the end of March, but that placement has been postponed. So I only have one placement under my belt, and that was just a 2-week observational placement I did at the end of December. So although I don't have a plethora of experience by any means, I loved my placement. I loved it. I was at the Hamilton Catholic District School Board working with an SLP there who runs this preschool speech and language program. And it gave me the opportunity to just apply everything I had just learned in the first 3 months and actually get to practice it. When you have an SLP who will sit with you and go over everything that they just did, you watch an assessment, and my SLP was great. She explained everything she did, why she did it, the research behind why she did what she did, and it really allowed me to just solidify all of that knowledge I had in class. So my next placement now is supposed to be starting in September. I'm crossing my fingers that will still be the case. I'm supposed to be at Ron Joyce, which is a developmental rehabilitation clinic in Hamilton. And I'm really, really excited about it. So really, really hoping it works out. And just, Andrea, just any thoughts in general and any advice? My advice would just be put yourself out there like fully. I know when I was really intimidated going into my program because it's really competitive and you have to have a high GPA and you have to do all of these things in order to get in. But you got in, right? So now it's up, you are qualified in order to be there. You have every right to be there. At the beginning, I thought I was going to be comparing myself to all these other people. How am I smart enough to be here? All these other people are way smarter than me. But I just stopped thinking that way. I would just fully immerse myself in the environment and fake it till you make it. That was how I did it. If you don't feel smart enough to be there, fake it. Fake that you're smart enough to be there because you are smart enough to be there. Take on as many roles as you can. I know a lot of the roles come out in the first week for student council and everyone's really overwhelmed because you're in a new environment and there's so much going on. But I applied to a few of those roles and I got them. And I know my experience at the school wouldn't be the same if I wasn't as involved as I currently am. So that would be my advice. Just really try to get to know people, put yourself out there, even if it's scary at first. Okay. Hello, sorry, Pooja, I will read your question. How difficult / competitive was it to get into the program and what do you think would make the strongest application? Another great question. So on McMaster's website, and I believe on U of T and Western, they post the average sub-GPA that the applicants had who received an interview. I don't want to misquote it. I believe it was around 3.85 was the GPA to get into McMaster, was the average for an interview. But remember, that's your last 2 years of school or your last 10 full year credits. And that's only the average. So that means half the people were below and half the people were above. I wouldn't let a GPA that's a bit lower or even significantly lower, I would not let that stop you from applying because you never know what this year's application pool is going to be like. Especially for the other schools like U of T and Western, it's not solely reliant on your GPA. You also have a personal statement and then you have a resume sort of thing to submit. And that's where you can showcase who you truly are and what you've done to make you the best applicant possible. So for the second part of your question, what would make the strongest application? I know a lot of schools look for research experience and for experience with speech pathologists in the field. I believe the current thing on the website, the current amount of hours is 14 hours. I will say, I think that's the lowest level I don't know anyone who got in with 14 hours of clinical experience. I think you need significantly more than that to put out a stronger application. But more so than that, it's not even about the hours. It's about, if you want to be there, then you want to get experience with a speech pathologist as much as you can to make sure that you're choosing the right profession. So what I did is I volunteered with a speech pathologist who ran a group therapy session on the weekends. And I think I got about 150 hours from that. I did that for a whole year, like 5 hours every Saturday. And for me, it wasn't like, oh, I have to do this for my application. It was, I want to do this because I want to learn as much as I can in order to be here. And if you don't have that philosophy, or if you're like, oh, this is a drag, I don't want to be doing all these hours, then that might be a sign that, maybe I should be rethinking this career. Maybe it's not for me, because I was that person. I was that, not child, but I was that older teenager when all my friends were getting experience with a dietitian and they were so excited about it, and I just didn't want to do it. I was doing it, but I didn't want to. And then I sort of rethought. I was like, why don't I want to do this? And it was because, well, actually, this isn't the career that I want. So I would say get as much experience as possible. It will really help you once you're actually in school, and it will make for a stronger application. And then research experience. I hate to admit, I didn't have any. It terrified me. It almost stopped me from applying, to be honest. But like I said, don't let something that you think is a flaw in your application stop you from applying. Don't let it. If it stopped me, I got into all three, right? If I let that stop me, I wouldn't have got in anywhere. Okay. So, hello, quick question. What do you suggest for someone who wants experience in SLP before applying? Also, what does the workday look for an SLP? Okay, so for the first part, what do you suggest for someone who wants experience? I would suggest even a quick Google search about speech pathologists in your area, and calling them up, giving them a call, seeing if they're looking for any volunteers to help run their activities, to help run their programs, or just someone to call and ask questions to. I know it sounds weird, but I was lucky. I had a sort of a mentor type person, and one of my aunts is also a speech pathologist, so I was able to ask them a bunch of questions, and I was able to volunteer with them to get that experience that I needed to know if it was right for me. Because no matter how much research you do about the profession, actually being there for a day in the life, that's much more telling than reading about it on the internet, at least for me. And what does the workday for an SLP look like? Okay, that is a very difficult question to answer, but I'm very happy you asked it, because I'm still trying to figure it out, because it's so highly variable. SLPs can work in a whole bunch of different settings, with different populations. You can work with infants in feeding in a hospital, in a NICU. You can work with teenagers with traumatic brain injuries in the youth criminal justice system. You can work with adults after a stroke with dysphagia in a hospital. So the day-to-day is just so variable that that's a very difficult question to answer. But my answer to that would be, it totally depends on what area you're working in. Ken, building on what Pooja and Farasia, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, I'm very sorry. Did you shadow SLPs before you applied to the program? If so, how did you go about reaching out to them? Thank you, Ken, for clarifying that. So I did shadow SLPs before I applied to the program. It was actually as I was applying. So I was in that year at York, that my transition year where I was taking those prerequisites. That's when I was volunteering with that SLP. And I was sort of shadowing, but she also gave me a more hands-on role where I actually got to be part of the planning and coordinating of the group therapy programs that we were running. And I was very lucky. I worked as like a swim director at a day camp with an old staff who used to work there, who was a speech pathologist, and she was looking for people to help run a program. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting and maybe something that I would be interested in. So I took that opportunity, and that's why I started volunteering with her every Saturday, like I said, for about 5 hours a day. And I racked up a few hundred volunteer hours, which was an added bonus. My recommendation would be, if you don't have that personal connection, don't let that stop you from reaching out to people. There's always speech pathologists looking for people to help them run their program. So do a quick Google search, maybe look on LinkedIn. And if you know anyone who knows someone who you know what I mean? It's all about connections. But if you don't have those connections, Google is great. Send people a few emails, make some phone calls, and that will really help you get those hours that you need. Rima, where did you take the course that fulfills phonetics? So I took phonetics at York University. It was a half-year credit, which was all I needed because I know Ryerson doesn't offer phonetics, which was a challenge for me because I wanted to take it, but it's easy to take it at another school as well. Rima, sorry, sent that earlier. The phonetics requirement that U of T and Western look for. Yes, so you're right. McMaster does not require a phonetics course, but U of T and Western both do. So since I was applying to all three, I took that at York.
Awesome. And maybe as we wait for like more questions, I'll ask you a question as well. Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
Actually, no, I have one. Maybe like, what do you wish you knew when you were studying at Ryerson that you now know, or like 2 pieces of advice you would want to share with students?
I think one thing I would share is it's okay if you don't know what you want to do or if you're not 100% sure about your decision. That is what stopped me from applying to speech language pathology for not a few years, but for a year. And it's what almost stopped me from applying the second year because I doubted myself. I doubted if I was making the right decision. I didn't know for 100% certainty if this was the career I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But how should I have known? I wasn't a speech language pathologist. I wasn't supposed to know. So I think people, I shouldn't say people, but people like me like to quit before they get there because that stops you from failing. And if you can stop yourself from failing before you even start, then it wasn't a failure. But I think that's now being where I am, I think that's the number one failure is quitting before you even try. I would just say stop. Like if you keep pushing down the idea in your head, like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I don't know 100% sure. Oh, I'm not even gonna get in. Why bother? Try to just push those thoughts away and just go straight for it. And that's finally what I decided to do. And I'm so happy that I did. Another piece of advice I could say is something that really helped me was getting to know my professors. It's something I didn't do early on in my undergraduate degree because I figured it was useless and there's not really a point and why would they care about getting to know me? But building those personal relationships with your professors are really, really useful for doing well in a course because if they can put a name to the face and when they're marking your assignment, I'm not going to say you're going to do better, but at least they say, oh, I remember that student. She came to my office hours. She's really trying hard. Or if you have a question, like you can go to their office hours or book an appointment outside of their time, they're going to be much more lenient and flexible with you if you've tried to make an effort and build that relationship with them. It also came in handy when I needed references for my application. I went to office hours. If I didn't have a specific question, I still went to office hours. I still went just to go over the content, just to say what was on my mind, even just to have a little personal chat. And I wouldn't say I became friends with my professors because it wasn't like that, but it was a nice professional relationship I had with them. And I think that helped my cause because I asked them to be a reference for me and 2 of them said yes, the 2 that I asked. So I think those strong references really helped my application. I know McMaster doesn't need references, but U of T and Western did. So that was also really important to me. Put yourself out there, even if it's awkward. I know I'm very talkative right now, but in class, I was not in undergrad. Like I was quiet, I kept to myself. I went in and out and I just wanted to do as well as I could and that was it. But I shifted my mentality and I think it worked well for me.
Nice. And maybe as a follow-up question, based on your experience, like, observing and working with SLPs, what are some sort of like transferable or human skills that are essential in that role? And in addition to that, based on like what you know of the profession, when you were considering engaging in certain like volunteer opportunities, were you mindful of like the speech language pathologist like competencies, like the family-centered care and etc., and that's how you approached your volunteering?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Ken. A few of the skills I think that were so crucial that I noticed the SLP I volunteered with was absolutely amazing. So I noticed the skills that she had, and one of the main ones is active listening, I would say, and demonstrating empathy. So active listening skills is just when you're talking to someone, just showing that you're really listening to what they're saying. Don't be thinking about what you're going to be saying next. Look them in the eye, put all your technology away, far away, face down, no phones. You can nod when someone's talking, just like all those ways to demonstrate that you care about what that person's saying and you genuinely care, not just that you have to care. Another thing is demonstrating empathy. I think that's so important for building rapport and building a strong relationship with your clients. If they feel comfortable with you, then they're going to be more likely to be honest and open and actually share what's going on in their world and what's going on in their life with you, which is so important for how you do therapy. Because if you don't truly understand what someone's going through, and let's say you assign them to practice X, Y, and Z at home, but you don't know that the mom works full time, the dad, they recently got divorced, so the dad's not in the picture, whatever it may be. And now they just feel like their therapist doesn't understand what they're going through and they can't relate to your services at all. So while you may be administering the best clinical advice, while it may be so good and exactly what they need to succeed, if it's not going to work with their lifestyle, then you just wasted an hour session or whatever it was. So really getting to know your client, active listening, empathy are two most important things. And like you said, Ken, that all revolves around family-centered care. So getting to know the family first. And then one more thing is just communication. I mean, it's the whole thing about our profession is communication. We're communication professionals. So stringing your thoughts together in a way that makes sense to other people, in a way that's easily comprehensible without jargon that no one else understands except for other speech pathologists. Try to avoid that. But yeah.
Awesome. And just to quickly address Pooja's question regarding does the Career Center at Ryerson help set up SLP volunteer positions or have an outreach program for that? We don't, but RU Leadership has a portal called Volunteer Link, I believe, and there are sometimes volunteer postings on there. So there could possibly be one around SLP. But in addition to that, the Try Mentoring program, they have a program called Career Mentoring, where they partner third and fourth year students with industry professionals in the field. So that could be a way for you to identify an SLP mentor and then possibly even transition that to like a volunteer role or commitment, or they could possibly connect you with other SLP professionals in their network. And because it's now 4:02 p.m., maybe I'll have Sara share her last words of advice that she wished she heard when she wasn't doing her undergrad, and how you could possibly connect with her after this conversation.
Sure. Okay, so what I wish I knew in my undergrad, I think I've spoken to it a little bit, but instead of the philosophy of why me, like why should I do this, how about try thinking of it as why not me? Why not me? Right? That puts you in the position of I can do this, not this isn't for me, I should be thinking of something else. Just trying to be more positive and confident in yourself, I think can go a really long way. And will give you the assurance that even if you don't know 100% if this is the right decision, that you can put your best effort and your best foot forward to try to get to where you want to be. And sorry, Ken, what was the second part of your question? Oh, how they can connect with me in the future. So I'm on LinkedIn. I believe Ken shared my LinkedIn in my bio. It's just Sara Goodman. You can feel free to connect with me there if you have any further questions. If you want, Ken, do you want me to provide my email address? I'm happy if students want to reach out to me with any questions in the future.
Sure, if you want to like put in the chat box, or I can just email it afterwards, whatever your
Sure,
preference
I
is.
will put it in the chat box right now. Just want to know, please don't send it out to like a whole bunch of like anyone else. Just keep it for yourself. If you have any questions about speech pathology, I'd be really happy to answer, or about McMaster or prerequisites or anything like that. I know it's really helpful to have a mentor to guide you in that way. I asked a bunch of people a whole bunch of questions when I was applying, because the application process can be a little bit tricky to navigate sometimes. So feel free to reach out to me through that email or from LinkedIn.
Amazing. This has been such a wonderful Ask Me Anything with Sara. Thank you so much, Sara, for coming and like having and sharing like your experiences and your wisdom with Ryerson students. Thank you for your time, and this has been absolutely wonderful. And that basically wraps up today's Ask Me Anything. If you do want to connect with Sara, her email is in the chat box. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Bye.
Thanks, Sara.
No problem. Take care.